Man, this is absolutely crazy. I apologize for all this tech shit that's going on. For somebody who's running an online business, you think one, I would have this figured out, but two, as tech savvy as I am, I'll be able to figure this out. And here's the kicker. I have run summits. I have run online videos and trainings and podcasts multiple times before. And I've even been able to live stream multiple calls with hundreds of people on them to Facebook, to YouTube. I don't, and I can't get it to work. I can't get the live stream to screen share inside of Facebook, and I can't get Zoom to connect to Facebook to do a live call on that. So I sincerely apologize. I'm even going to demo, like I've gone into Zoom support and I've done the step-by-step process of what they say to how to link your live stream on Zoom to Facebook. And the settings that they're talking about on the Zoom support are not even available to me. Like, it's crazy. So I'm just going to show you real quick. And then we'll get into the presentation because I just want you to know I'm not bullshitting you guys. All right. So I'm going to go here to, I've already went to this. This is Zoom support, by the way. Okay. And I went to this. I looked up, I just clicked Facebook, live streaming meetings or webinars on Facebook, enable live streaming for meetings for your entire account. So it says go to account management and then account settings, then click the meeting tab, meeting advanced, and verify that allow live streaming. And this is even clickable. So when I click on this, I'm even going to go to user. So now Zoom web portal, settings, meeting, in meeting, all this, right here. So we're going to settings. So make sure we're following step-by-step. Settings, the meeting tab, in advanced, live streaming, looking for live streaming, looking for live streaming, looking for live streaming, looking for live streaming, and no live streaming, email notifications. That's it, because that's on to the next tab. No, this was not helpful. Ay. And I've gone into Facebook to do this too. And their settings for sharing your screen, it says go to your computer settings because you don't have it set to share your screen. And I'm like, what in the hell? So I tried 2 different browsers and it only works on Google Chrome. So it has been just a shit show trying to get this live put together for you. So I apologize. Apparently, Kyle Pullins does not know how to go live on Facebook anymore and is only going to be going live. I guess not. He's not going to be going live. So, all right, we're just going to get right into this. The off-season training for baseball players, how to increase their velocity, how to hit for more power, decrease their chance of injury, and playing with more confidence. This is going to be a 2-part series, way too much stuff to cover in one sitting. So I'm going to start from the beginning here. So here we go. All right, so this is really going to be for guys who are eager to learn, parents and coaches. Obviously, you guys are welcome in on this too. I feel like we're going to get a lot of parents and coaches in on this. These are looking for guys who are hungry and wanting to put the work in this offseason. Too many players wait until season starts to go and get lessons to get ready for the season. And it's way too fucking late at that point. It is too late if you are waiting till season starts to get your body and your skills ready. We are right now, as I'm doing this, it is September 13th. That means we have 2.5 weeks in September, October, November, December, and January. Pretty much 5 months to really get the body ready. And you're going to have, and we're going to dive into like the phases throughout the year, but you're going to have that preseason training as well. We're talking about maximizing the off-season training right now. Obviously, this is for guys who are 12 and up. You know, I'm not even going to get into the whole weightlifting for younger kids, like, oh, it's going to stunt your growth, this and that. Like, it's just straight up not anymore. If you really believe that, then happy to talk about it, but have you even done your research on it? Or is this just something that has been passed down from coach to coach type of thing? Because there are kids who, it's about progressive overload, it's about the principles, and it's about movement. And there are plenty of safe ways to exercise without putting the kid under a barbell and having them max squat at 12 years old. It's not what we're talking about doing here. All right, so here are the seasons for training. And this is a year-round periodized training program, ideal what it looks like for baseball specific, okay? So it goes off-season, preseason, in-season, postseason, and we start over again. The off-season is going to be longer the younger you are, it's going to be shorter the older that you get, okay? It's just plain simple, because when you get older, you're going to be playing more often. Nowadays, honestly, the pro season is what these youth guys are doing. I mean, they're starting in March and they're playing all the way through June and most of July. Then they take in the end of July and they're taking August off, and they start up September, and then they go through November, and then it's December, January, February, and they're starting all over again. So that's a whole nother shit show that we need to see changes in, because if we want these kids to be healthy, we want these kids to be playing for the long term, not getting burnout, all that stuff. I went into the burnout on that last training that I did, a couple of weeks ago, but you can see the differences and really the different months and stages of the year that need to go into this. Now, the off-season training is really where the bulk of the training needs to happen, because one, it's longer, and two, we can really go heavier, we can go harder and be more intense with the training this time of year than we can during the in season. Now, there's different ramp up phases, and even during the in season, guys aren't taking time off. That's a big thing. Guys are still training during the in season. We're not going to lose all the gains that we built in the off season and preseason. We need to be able to scale that through the in-season training. So guys are still getting after it during the in-season. They're not going to get hurt. They're not going to get injured, or they're not going to be too sore, because they got their bodies right. They got their workload, their work capacity up, and they're able to handle that workload that they were doing all throughout the off season. So that's a lot of times why guys who start working out in season, or they start at the beginning of the season, they get sore. And where all that stigma comes from is because they weren't ready in the first place, and they're limiting themselves, and they stop working out because they don't want to be too sore, this and that during the season. All these types of reasons, right? So we're going to focus on the off season. So we need to understand, and this is something I've talked about before, I'm going to keep talking about it because everything comes back to the core four. These are the 4 pillars of performance across the board for any sport. Now, I call it the core 4. I learned this from other people, and one of the main guys that I really started diving into this deeper from is my friend Ben Brewster of Tread Athletics. He wrote about this in his book, The 4 Pillars of Performance. He got it from somebody else, right? The 4 pillars are the physiological, the psychological, the technical, and the tactical. These are the 4 areas that go into player development. So obviously we've got the physical, and this encompasses a lot of different things. It's the physical exercise. It is the nutrition, which encompasses the hydration, the food, the supplementation. And we're also looking as well at the digestion and absorption is a big piece of it, the recovery piece, and the ground force reaction, ability to use the ground, transferring that over, et cetera. That goes as well. It covers a lot of this stuff is going to overlap, right? But it also goes in with the technical as well. So the psychological is the mental game. You've got to be able to handle your emotions, stress, pressure, having a mental process and a system that you can put into place and have it on autopilot, so that no matter the situation, game 7, two strikes, 2 outs, bases loaded, or it's opening day. It does not matter. You need to have a mental system in place so that you're able to handle any situation. And the technical is really all the skills and the drills, the techniques, the mechanics, the things that most people are diving into. Players and coaches are diving into, oh, it's my hand path, or it's my, I'm not using my hips, or I'm opening up, or all these things that people want to go to, oh, I'm trying to get more power. Oh, I want to be able to throw harder. And they always go to the technical for some reason. And it's not found in the technical. I'm going to show you a hierarchy of how guys really need to be looking at this overall core four and going step by step down like a checklist, and how you can mark off, okay, I got these, I passed this, I passed this, I passed this. So we can pinpoint exactly what the problem is, because too many times we just go to the technical in every sport really, but especially baseball and especially in golf. It's all technical. They're going to their swing coach, they're going to their hitting coach. They have a bad game, I got to go see my pitching coach. I threw bad today, I got to go see my pitching coach. Technique. It's not the technique most of the time. Okay, here's that hierarchy I'm talking about. First, guys need to be able to pass the 4 rotary centers of the body. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to show you what those tests are and what they mean. Okay, if you cannot properly rotate through the 4 rotary centers of the body, these are 4 core areas where rotation happens. And as we know, baseball is a very rotational sport. If you cannot rotate properly through these 4 areas, you will compensate elsewhere. You will compensate. And this is where guys who are struggling with consistency, particularly pitchers, obviously it's going to happen defensively and at the plate too. But the reason this is more pertinent for pitchers, and I'm not saying it's not pertinent for position players, but particularly referring to the consistency piece of the mechanics, is when you cannot consistent, because as a pitcher, you are going to have the same motion again and again and again. It's going to be drilled in. As a hitter, you have to react. And sometimes you can get away with less than efficient or less than perfect mechanics because you're out in front of a breaking ball, or you were sitting off speed, but you reacted quick and got the barrel through inside and got the single on the fastball, whatever it is, right? Those adjustments kind of things. But if we're talking about our A+ swing, when we're on time with our A+ swing, this applies to both. So if you cannot properly rotate through the core 4, then you are going to compensate elsewhere. And that's when you get into all these technical flaws that you see all the time that hitting coaches and pitching coaches are trying to work on, but they don't realize it's a physical problem. Okay. So the core 4 rotary centers, you got to pass rotation through these 4 pillars. Now, then we go into the movement patterns. These are the primary movements that every human being, every athletic person does. Okay, we got to have clean movements through there. Inefficiency in the movements can translate over to weaknesses, imbalances in the body, and that's going to be seen in the swing and in the mechanics and in the pitching. Then we're going to the strength, then we're going to the power, then we're going to the mechanics and sequencing, the timing, the sequence, the flow, the rhythm, all that stuff flows in together. Then we've got the mental performance and then ground force training. Honestly, I could have put the mental performance 1, because a lot of times if you have the mental game down and you have a system down on the mental side with your approach and how you're just attacking pitchers or you're attacking hitters as the pitcher, you can be successful without changing any mechanics at all, without changing any physical structure, the way that you swing, the strength, the mobility, all that stuff, just by the mental side, which is very powerful. That's a completely separate conversation, one we can have if you want to have. Leave me a comment below if that's something you want to dive deeper into. But what we're going to be focusing on today is really the first 4. All right. And then the ground force reaction, the ground force training, how well are you using the ground, the timing of that, the sequencing of that. So there's a lot of levels to this, but this, we're going to cover the first 4 there. All right. So really, we've got to know where you're at right now. We've got to assess yourself. And in baseball, they have the 5 tools. And this is what college, pro, scouts, and really high school guys, high school coaches are using to grade guys. It's the 5 tools. So you may have heard of this before. It's hit for average, hit for power, arm strength, glove, and speed. And then the 6th tool is the mental makeup, the mental game side of things. So we're really going to be talking about the 5 tools. Now, I broke it down and made it simple, grading it 1 through 5. And this is going to be relative based on your age and skill level, right? Skill level is going to go into this, but I'm not going to have a guy grade himself out of the full scale, which is a 20 to 80 scale. This is what the pro scouts use to grade guys on a 20 to 80 scale. So 50 would be average in the middle there, right? And they do it in increments of 5. So 20, 25, 30, 35, etc. So that is how they really grade guys based on the analytics that they're getting, which is a lot of this down here, which is your speed, your throwing velocity from the infield and the outfield, pitching velocity. Pitchers have their own tool grading system. I'm just doing hitters on this piece because they grade pitchers by each of their pitches, the movement that they have on those, the command that they have, and their health. It's kind of like the 4 tools that they really grade on pitchers, and they'll grade more each individual pitch that they have. So baseline testing, we're going to do, this is going to be on your own stuff. Go and test out these numbers. Get your 20, 40, and 60-yard dashes. Everybody's doing the 60-yard dash. Not enough guys are doing I really should have added the 10-yard dash in here. 10, 20, and 40-yard dash, because we need to know how quickly can you accelerate, and in short bursts, especially outfielders. And then the pro agility, the 5, 10, 5, this is pertinent for every athlete across any sport. So these are the kind of speed tests that you're going to be going through. And what I didn't put down is exit velocity as a hitter. Exit velocity is a big one that guys are tracking as well. So now we got to self-assess the body. So talking about the core 4, we're really going to be diving into the 2, really the physical pillar. We can do a little bit of the technical pillar on your own. And again, that's a separate training that I can do. I'll talk about that in a minute. But we're talking about the physical right now, and going back to the hierarchy, okay, the rotary centers, the movement pattern, strength, speed, and power. Now, assessing the body, we talked about, the metrics here, the testing, plus throwing in the exit velocity for the tools. That's going to help you grade on where you're at on just going 1 through 5, right? Because a freshman grading 1 through 5 isn't going to be the same as a senior grading 1 through 5. Now, we could just do all high school guys and be across the board high school and go grading across high school level, which is what college coaches, a lot of high level high school coaches and pro guys are going to do, especially if you're going to the perfect games, the PBRs, and you're trying to get seen on that level, right? They're going to grade you really on the 20 to 80 scale that the pro scouts use, but I like to break it down by the 1 through 5. And as you get older, we can really kind of scale this back to that. So I'll dive into each of these, but the posture screening, these are the 4 rotary centers. It's the neck, it's the shoulders, it's the thoracic spine, and it's the hips. Okay. Then we are going to go into the functional movement screen. This one I didn't necessarily dive into. It's easy. FMS, look up the FMS, the functional movement screen. These are the ones that I would recommend that every guy go through. Now, I show it a little bit later, coming back here. Number 2 is the movement patterns, right? The functional movement screen dives into several of those movement patterns. But what the movement patterns are, there's the squat, which is, we've got the squat, the hinge, the push, the pull, lunge, carry, rotate, and gait. And really what gait is how you walk, run, sprint, jump, hop, skip, all of those other movements, athletic movements like that. So really that is all of the human movements that we have. And if you really want to go back even further than that, take a peek at what babies do from the time that they're born. What do they do? At first, they're just learning how to move their head side to side. They got the eye pattern going, looking around, observing everything that's around them. Then they start moving the head side to side and in circles. So we're getting this strength through the core what the core strength comes from at first being able to lift and move and rotate the head, because your core is your entire spinal cord, your scapula and your shoulder socket here, as well as your hips and your hip socket. So pretty much anything that moves through the core is really obviously going to be considered the core. So that includes the head, the skull, the spine, the hips, and the shoulder socket and scaps, rib cage, right? Everything in the torso. After they get the head movement down, they call it the dead bug exercise, where they're flailing their arms and their legs up in the air and they're kicking. And pretty soon they're rolling around side to side. And then soon they're on their stomach flat and they're doing a press up. So they're pushing themselves to sit up and look around, because they're not able to get on all fours yet or crawl around, right? And then they get to all fours. Then they start to be able to crawl. Then from crawling, they're pushing themselves up and they're sitting into a squat position, and they're holding the squat position, and then they're standing. So they're doing a squat to stand, right? They may have to use something else to hold, but eventually they can do it on their own. And then a squat position becomes a natural, just hang out position for them. Then they're walking, and then they're running, and so on and so on. So that is really what the human progression of movement looks like. And we lose that because we just sit more. It's just the way we are with school, traveling to practice, to games, all this stuff. We're really only active for an hour or so out of a day, a couple hours maybe, when we used to be on our feet, moving, active all the time as humans. So performance tests, we're going to identify our strength, power, speed, endurance, and the stability. A lot of this is core and shoulder stability. So again, self-assessing the mechanics, that's another piece. Really just going through and filming yourself going through each of these pieces. And first off, what do you see? What is it that you're seeing in your mechanics, from your hitting to your pitching to your defense, running, jumping, sprinting? What do you notice? It's a lot of times, hey, I can, especially nowadays, right? The very first time I saw myself hitting, I was in middle school, but I was at a Wichita State baseball camp, and they had, some nice cameras set up there. This was back in the early 2000s. So probably about 20 years ago-ish. And I didn't have cameras. I never really saw myself outside of that pitch and hit any of that until really like into college a little bit. And even then, it's just smartphones weren't good enough back then. And you had to pay a lot of money to have iPhones, and a lot of people had iPhones. First it was Blackberries coming across, and you just had to go out and buy a nice camera. It's different today. Guys have the access. Every single guy that's watching this probably has a smartphone and is able to film themselves. And parents are taking videos of their kids more often because they've got a smartphone. It's so much easier nowadays. But a lot of kids still don't know what they look like, hitting, pitching, etc. Take the time to look at it, and what is it that you see before you go. And I'm happy to break some stuff down for you guys. I'm going to do a separate training on that if you want me to. Again, leave a comment below if you want to do like a hitting and pitching, fundamentals, mechanics 101 type thing. But let's keep it moving. All right, the posture screening. This is what I use. I'm taking this segment from Eric Cressy's Assess and Correct. It's one of his programs that I went through. And at the end of this, I'm going to share with you, if you really just want to do all this on your own, I'm going to throw the book at you. I'm going to give you all the resources and the people that I use and study from. And Eric Cressy was one of the first guys that I really started learning from back in 2013 and 2014, when I was getting started in this world and an intern as a personal trainer. So this is from one of his book programs called Assess and Correct, and it's looking at all of the different postures that we would really need to cover. These are just static postures, so you can do it one of two ways. One, you can take a picture of each of these positions, or two, you can turn a video on and just turn and rotate your body and go through all these different positions and look at them that way. All right, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this one. If you guys want the slides, I'll send these over to you and you can go through them. Most of you guys should know how to screenshot by now, so you can take a quick screenshot of this and go through this on your own. Now, it's above the scope of this one video to go, okay, let's look at this posture screening and break down every single piece of this, right? That's a separate training. I just want to give you guys the high level stuff so you can go and put this into practice on your own. All right, rotary center test number 1 is going to be the neck rotation. So this is a pass or fail test. And simply what you're doing is you're just turning to one side and you're tucking the chin. And can you touch your chin down to your collarbone? You need to be able to turn your entire neck, your entire head to where your chin and your nose is over that clavicle, which is the bone on the outside part of the shoulder. And if you can't get full rotation and turn to be parallel with that, that's a fail. And if you can't touch the chin down to the collarbone, that's a fail as well. Okay. Oh my goodness. Are we going to work? Okay, beautiful. We are. So this is called a shoulder car, but really it's a controlled full range of motion movement for the shoulder. Now, the shoulder and the hip move the same way. Obviously, the shoulder has more range of motion than the hip does, but what we have is flexion, we have extension, we have internal rotation, external rotation, abduction, and adduction. Now, flexion is, as you can see here, this guy is raising his arm up overhead. That is shoulder flexion, raising the arm up. Okay. Extension is taking the arm back to the hip, back down to your side and behind you, right? That is shoulder extension. In external rotation is that lay back position where we lay the arm back. And then internal rotation is like the follow through position coming down here. Okay. Abduction, abduction is taking our arm away from our midline. Adduction, adduction is bringing it towards our midline. Okay. So there is horizontal abduction and adduction, which is this movement right here. And then harder to see, but from the side, this is going to be abduction and adduction here. Okay. So this is combining everything to a 360-degree movement. I'm going to show you what this looks like right here. So for this test, he's locking in his abs. He's what they call irradiation, which is where he is squeezing his glutes, squeezing the quads, and he's squeezing this other arm so that no other part of the body can really kick in and compensate to help with this movement. Now, the interesting thing about the shoulder test is that the test is also the exercise to help with increasing that mobility in that area. Now, first, he's going to go into shoulder flexion. Now, we should be able to get the bicep to the ear and past the ear into a little bit more flexion there without really having to hike the shoulder up too much or rotate the shoulders to get into that position. From here, he's going to go internal rotation through extension. Now, he's doing a great job of trying to keep this hand and arm close to midline, and he's not really rotating too much with the thoracic spine or with the shoulders to get him back into this extension position. So notice his thumb is turning down as he's going through this, and he'll roll through again. Now he's going to go backwards extension all the way through external rotation and back around, keeping the elbow straight. So some signs for this test that you're not passing or that this one needs work is if the elbow is bending, if you really have to, like, as you're going back, you have to turn and rotate the shoulders to keep that there. Like I'm seated right now. You could do this one seated like he is, or seated, or you can do it kneeling like he is. But we want to be able to get bicep to ear or beyond it, then be able to internally rotate. The farther away our hand and our body is, or our hand and our arm is from our center and our midline, the more that we need work on this. So that's kind of the pass fail caution on this one. It's a little bit harder to describe, but this is a good side angle to really see, okay, boom, bicep and past it, he's able to clear that. Now, internal rotation, he's really rotating from the ball and socket, from deep in the armpit, not just turning at the elbow or at the wrist, right? It's full internal rotation of the shoulder. And notice how he's not really turning his torso too much to this side to help him with that movement. He's staying pretty much straightforward. I wouldn't recommend doing this one standing because the hips and the legs really come into play and you get even more compensations. I recommend filming yourself going through these rotary center tests. We want to be able to get good extension back behind. If guys aren't able to really clear back behind with the arm like that, that's a sign, you know, each of these pieces is lacking. And we can look at each one of these, the flexion, the extension, the internal rotation, external rotation, abduction or adduction, and be like, okay, these are the areas, these are the sticking points, these are the problem areas, and we can work through those. All right. Moving on, the thoracic spine. So this is going to be a seated trunk rotation test. You can use anything you want to anchor the legs. He's using a soccer ball on this one. You could use a foam roller. You could use anything really, just so it's keeping your hips about hip width apart and the hips lower back isn't moving. We just want to have a pure upper body rotation, and good to have a PVC pipe. You can use a golf club as well, something longer. How far is it? Can you rotate to the left? How far can you rotate to the right? This is going to be pass, caution, or fail. And again, going back to these 4 rotation tests, whichever ones you need work on, I'll show you how to improve on them as well. So failing is not be able to get to at least 65 degrees, really 70 degrees of rotation there. All right, and last one is the hips. I'm going to say pretty much every single baseball player is probably going to fail this test. All right, this is the toughest one. This is the hip internal rotation test. Most guys have enough external rotation. We usually don't need a test for external rotation. Internal rotation is very problematic. And I'm going to say 98% of players are going to fail at least one of these 4 tests. If you're failing any one of these 4 tests, you are going to compensate in your swing. You are going to compensate in your pitching motion. Now, can guys have compensation or have problems with these and still be able to perform out on the field? Yes, of course they can, right? Just because they fail one of these tests doesn't mean they're going to fail on the field. But if you clean up these tests and you pass these tests, it's going to make everything else that you're doing on the field easier. Okay, so this one is seated, and a lot of guys, they're going to cheat with this one. They're going to hike the hip up. They're going to lean to one side. You've got to stay center, chin, nose, right over your belly button. Belly button stays right over your belt buckle. And all you're doing is you just lift that foot up and you lift it out to the side as far as you can go. You should feel right basically where if you were to put your hand in your pocket right there on the side of your hip, that area, you should feel that working. Can you get to 45 degrees or more? If so, that's a pass. If you can't, that's going to be a problem. The number 1 cause of back pain, I'm not going to say, no, I should rephrase that. Probably not the number 1 cause of back pain, but if you were to take people who have back pain, most of them, if not all of them, cannot pass this test. The hips and the low back work very well together. They are very interconnected. And the hip muscles overlap, they attach up into the spine, particularly the hip flexors. So being able to have clean moving hips is vital for athletic performance. Okay, going into the strength numbers here. All right, so again, I mentioned the movements earlier. We've got the squat, press, hinge, pull, lunge, carry, which is farmer's walk, single leg. It's kind of the other one I didn't mention. You've got single leg squat and single leg hinge. Not really going to get into the single leg hinge too much, but single arm row and single arm press is more of what I would like to see guys kind of testing for and getting strength numbers for versus like a bench press. but these are kind of the numbers that we're shooting for when it comes to that. Most of the time, I'm going to have baseball players do dumbbell bench press and single arm bench press. We need to get side to side worked out and having strong side to side. It's also going to challenge the core a lot as well. So just take a screenshot of these. These are the numbers that we're looking for. BW means body weight. So 1.5 to 1.7 time, 7.5 times your body weight on squat. These are advanced strength metrics that guys need to be shooting for. The hinge, which is really the deadlift. Okay. Most of the time I start guys with Romanian deadlifts, which is really just from the top down to the knees, not the full deadlift. And the lunge, I like the reverse lunge. There's each of these, again, is going to be relative, right? If you've got somebody younger, somebody newer, we're not going to go and try to max out and do a lot of this stuff. It's about passing rotary centers, getting the movement patterns down. Then we build strength. Then we build the power and the speed to go along with it. All right, power tests. These are the big power tests that we're looking for. We covered the speed test earlier through the tools testing that we talked about, the baseline testing there. The vertical jump is a great expression of vertical power, which there is, a vertical aspect, a pushing aspect in the hitting motion and the pitching motion. The broad jump is another good one. Lateral broad jump, single leg broad jump. So just really jumping off one leg, how far can you get landing on the other, right? Seated chest pass. This is just no rocking, no leaning, pure upper body power. How much do we have of that? And we'll use a few different weights for that. We'll kind of start light, medium, and go heavy and test for those. And the reverse overhead med ball throw. This is a full athletic, full triple extension is a big training term out there. Something guys need to be shooting for. There's triple flexion and there's triple extension. So we need to be training both of these positions. Triple extension is extension of the ankle, extension of the knee, extension of the hip. You could really, it's really a flexion of the arms when you're doing the overhead toss, but thoracic extension. So you could almost say quadruped, extension with the flexion there. Getting too technical there, but these are the power tests that we're going to be shooting for. And the real thing is get your baselines, get your numbers on these, and retest all of these from the mobility to the strength. The strength one you'll kind of get a sense of as you're already going through and training, but the power test and the speed test, particularly the mobility and the rotary center tests, every 2 to 3 weeks, be retesting that to make sure that you're seeing improvement. But the power test and the speed test you could do every 3 to 4 weeks as well. All right, endurance and stability. These are ones I really recommend for guys. Plank from the push-up position is a little bit more pertinent for baseball players. Being able to have that shoulder stability in there as well. 2 minutes without losing posture. So really what that looks like, I would recommend, checking out, perfect plank position or technique on YouTube. You'll get really good cues on that, but really it's keeping a neutral spine. A lot of times guys will sag their head, their hips will sag, or their scaps will be, squeezing back and their body is sunken down, or their knees have dropped. Anything that's not in a good straight line and a nice stable position, you can tell from when guys start in that position and when they really start to lose it. So they need to be able to hold and maintain that position for 2 minutes. Looking for 45 seconds, up to a minute each side on the side plank. Single leg glute bridge, we really want to make sure that the glutes are the powerhouse of the lower body. Okay, these are our hip extension drivers. These are our powerhouse of the lower body. And we need to make sure that one, that those are active, and two, those are strong. So individually, we want to make sure that there's not too much discrepancy side to side. Okay, wall sits is a really good endurance test for the quads and the thighs. And then the lunge, side to side, like we did for the single leg glute bridge. Now we're doing it in a lunge position, holding each side, and a bar hang, good grip and shoulder strength test, stability through there. Okay, so I'm going to break down how I build out my programs for my athletes and what guys can do to build their own programs as well. Now, you can do more research on this. My friend Mike Robertson, Robertson Training Systems, this is kind of a template of his methodology that he uses for program design and how a workout really flows. If you've worked out at a high level with a strength coach or with a good strength conditioning program, you'll see all these aspects in play. But this is really what it looks like. There's the reset, there's the release, there's the readiness, reactive, resistance, resilience, and recovery. This is all in one session, an hour to hour and a half that guys need to be doing. So I'll break down each of these pieces and what that looks like. First, we need to understand reps, sets, and loads, and really training effect. Okay, we are training to get a desired effect, a specific change in the body, right? Whether that's increase in absolute strength, in absolute speed, in muscle hypertrophy, muscular endurance, stamina, all these types of effects that we're trying to get in the body. They come from sets, reps, and loads and volume. We're not going to dive too much into volume today, but understanding these sets, reps, and loads are going to be an important factor, because if you are not doing these in the right way, you're not going to be getting the right training effect. And really, you're going to be wasting your time when you're training. You're not going to get the results that you think that you're trying to get in the first place. So absolute strength, this is kind of think of like powerlifting or strongman. These are 1 to 5 reps. If you're doing more than 5 reps, the weight is not heavy enough, right? And you're going to do more sets, the less reps that you do, the less reps that you do, the more rest time that you need in between, right? So you can start to see how this scales down and up from the sets and the reps and the rest, as well as the load. So 1 RM means 1 rep max. Now, I do not have guys do 1 rep maxes. I would go for a 5 rep max first, and then maybe a 3 rep max, and be able to use like a reverse calculation to find what numbers I need for that to be able to build out their program based off of those percentages that they're training off of for their workload and their exercises. But speed and power training, this is when you guys see people doing boot camps or like CrossFit or doing, circuits, they're not giving themselves enough rest time, or they're either going, this is a few of the problems with those types of training where people aren't really getting the desired speed and power gains that they really need. And they're either going too heavy, they're using a weight that's way too heavy, and they're not able to move it explosively and quickly like they need to be, or they are doing it with very little rest in between. The power and the speed exercises are going to be the most neurologically demanding. What that means is on the nervous system, those are going to be the most demanding. They're going to require the most out of the body. So your nervous system needs more time to recover than your muscular system does. Basically, your nervous system needs more time than your muscles to recover. So making sure that you're giving yourself that appropriate amount of time in between sets to recover, so you can really make sure that you're getting the desired effect. If you don't, and you just keep going and going and going, it turns into a conditioning exercise where we're not focused on conditioning. There's a difference between aerobic training and anaerobic training, and the speed, the power, and the strength relies in the anaerobic area. And anaerobic means without oxygen. Really, it just means you're being really fast, you're being really explosive, right? Think about 100% effort sprint. How long can you go? You're not going to be able to run a mile at a 100% effort sprint, right? So that's where this comes into play. You need to make sure that the rest periods match up, the intensities match up with the sets and the reps. Okay, R1 is reset. We need to reset the central nervous system. A lot of times we get into this sympathetic state where we're in a fight or flight state because we're stressed, we're on caffeine, all these different types of things. We're overactive. We need to let the body calm down. You'll be able to come back to center. And we do this through breath work. Okay. I like crocodile breathing. Crocodile breathing is really like an all four. So think of the trunk as having front and back and side to side. It's like a cylinder. Okay. There are no sides to a cylinder. It's just one big shape. So you need to be able to breathe into this 360-degree area. You're lying down on all fours, or excuse me, not on all fours. You're lying down on your belly, hands like this. Okay. Obviously can't have the hat like that. If you're having a hat on, it's backwards. You're like this. You're breathing in through the nose and you're really feeling your belly expand into the ground. But imagine like the gills of a fish or of an alligator. If you watch them breathe, they breathe into their sides as well, and they breathe into their low back. So the low back and the belly is expanding down, low back's expanding up and outward, all four directions. It's going to let your nervous system calm down. There's a lot of science and research around this type of stuff. You can dive into a lot more breath work type training. This is really good to help calm guys down in the moment, when you get overheated in a game, or you just can't get the mind to calm down, you're negatively thinking, etc. You can quickly go through a few of these breaths to help your body calm back down. So this is reset, is through the breath work. Okay, then we go into the release. Most people think foam rolling, SMR, or self myofascial release. Really what we're trying to do is target these overactive muscles, or these areas where there's a bit of scar tissue built up, the tissue quality isn't as good, and we're trying to loosen those areas up. So I'm going to have most of the time guys using like a lacrosse ball. I really like what's called an AccuMobility ball. You can look it up on Road Fitness or on Amazon as well. They're about $25 a pop, but they are amazing. They're better than lacrosse balls and definitely better than tennis balls. The modality or the tool that you're using here is really going to be dependent on your pain tolerance and different parts of the body. So these are the different tools that you can use. Golf ball just doesn't get into some areas as well. Same with the tennis ball. A Thoracic is a really good one. And I really like using the barbell for sometimes the biceps and the triceps, and really getting into the hamstrings as well. So a couple different methods. One is just doing like a pressure hold where you find a spot. Let's say you're doing the quads, for example. I'll show you all the different muscles to do based on the test from before for the rotary centers. But a pressure hold is really, let's say you're on the quads and you roll up and down, and right there is where I find a hot spot, a pain spot. I'm just going to stay on that spot until the pain starts to subside. The pain starts to go down. It sometimes can take 30 seconds, 45, a minute, maybe longer than that, but stay on it till it starts to release, move on to another muscle group. Now, as you're going through these and you're testing out these different muscles, if it's not feeling it that day, it doesn't need to work, let's move on. But sometimes guys just don't know where these muscles are, and it needs a little bit of hands-on work or somebody to show them. So really, once you find them, then okay, yeah, it's really there. I need to work on that one. So let's dive in. The other one is the pin and strip. So let's say you're foam rolling, you're on your elbows and you're foam rolling on your quad. You find that hot spot. All you're going to do is just straighten the leg out and bring it back. Straighten the leg out and bring it back. Just bending that knee back and forth, taking that joint through its range of motion to pin that tight spot down, and then you're just going to move that muscle through its range of motion. Okay, so these are the big muscles in the hips that we need to focus on. Now, one of the big ones is the hip flexors. Hip flexors, everybody knows what that are, but it's really a muscle group. Okay, the psoas major and psoas minor, we're not really going to get to minor, but iliacus is another big one. One thing I would recommend that you do, you can easily just go on YouTube and look up all these different muscles and how to find them. Muscleandmotion.com is a great website. It is one you would have to pay for. I believe they might have a free trial, but it's good to go in and learn the anatomy a bit and understand these muscles, because you're going to be spending time working on these. You need to know what they are. Okay. So rectus femoris is a quad and hip flexor muscle. Some of them overlap into others, right? and they do more than just one specific job. But these are the big ones. I would say these are probably the 4 or 5 right here off the jump that are going to need the most working, guys. The psoas major, rectus femoris, TFL, and piriformis. If you're failing that hip test, those are the areas where I'm going to start with. Then I'd work into the hamstrings and maybe into the glute medius or minimus and finding those. Okay. Shoulders. Okay, there's the rotator cuff. Again, this is a muscle group. There's 4 main muscles of the rotator cuff, and I would say the infraspinatus and the subscapularis, these 2 are the ones that need the most attention when it comes to the soft tissue work. Okay, levator scap is another problematic one that runs right back here across the lower part of the slope of the neck. So the neck and the shoulders, they overlap as well. So when you're doing some of the shoulder work, you're indirectly going to be, or almost indirect or directly, impacting the neck mobility that you're doing as well. Okay. The lats is another big one. Serratus anterior. This is one that guys don't know a whole lot about, but is very valuable for upwardly rotating the scapula. Okay. Go do your research on these muscles. I'm giving you the muscles that need to work. Go and test them out on your own. I'm not going to dive into every single one of them and show you where all of them are. Okay. That's too much for this training. All right. The neck, again, you can see levator scap comes into play. Upper trap comes into play again. Pec minor and pec major, they have influence and they're just proximity to the neck. They overlap with each other. Okay. But the SCM and the scalenes are 2 big ones that really need attention as well. All right. And other muscles to go after, the gastroc or the soleus, these are your calf muscles, and then your tibialis. It's really your anterior tibialis, basically the muscle that's on the side of your shin there, right? If you flex that toe up towards you, ankle up towards you, you're going to feel that muscle activate. The ball of the foot is another area that needs a lot of work. There's a lot of fascia, a lot of nerves that attach down there. Nerves don't attach, but a lot of nerve endings in the foot that really have an impact on the rest of your body. So spend some time on those areas as well. I'd be softer at first on the foot with a tennis ball, and then you can work your way up to be a little bit firmer from there. Okay, readiness. Are you ready for readiness? R3. 3 parts of this. Okay, you've got activation, you've got the dynamic warm up, and then you've got the strengthen. So we've spent time targeting the soft tissues that need releasing, relaxing. Now we want to activate the inactive muscles, the dormant muscles, right? Usually if the pecs are overactive, there's something in the shoulders that are underactive. So we'll do something to strengthen up that side. It's usually the opposite side, right? So the hip flexors are usually overactive, but they can also be weak too. So we do need to strengthen the hips, the hip flexors a lot of times as well, which is an area that goes underserved and undertrained a lot of times. So dynamic warm up, and we need to strengthen and like a movement prep type thing. We're really prepping the body for the movement, the training that we're going to be doing that day. So if it's more squat work and lunges, we need to make sure that we're prepping our quads, our glutes, our hips for that work. If it's more of an upper body day, we need to prep the body for that. All right, reactive. So this is, again, going in order, like I mentioned earlier, the most neurologically demanding exercises first before you go into the resistance training, the strength training. These are going to be the plyometrics that you do, the box jumps, the sprints, the Olympic lifting, the med ball throws, all of these explosive movements. These need to be done before the strength work because they're going to take more out of you. And if you go and do all your strength work and then you try to do the power training, your body isn't going to have the strength necessary, and it's going to be weak. It's going to be slow. You're not going to get out of it what you need. All right. So roughly 2 to 4 exercises. It could be a little bit more than that, depending on how well conditioned and trained the athlete is, the time of the year. There's a lot of factors that go into this, but really look at 2 to 4 big, explosive movements, 3 to 6 reps per exercise. And again, going back to the rep ranges and the load that I mentioned earlier, those are important factors as well. Coming into the just the quick tips here. Again, I'll let you read this stuff 2 to 3 times a week on this. This isn't one necessarily that you need to do every single day of the week. I honestly wouldn't recommend that because it takes a while for your nervous system to really recover after a heavy training session on the power and the speed movements. Resistance training, this is the meat and potatoes of the workouts. Okay, this is the big movements, the squat, the hinge, the lunge, the push, the pull, carry, and rotating. So this one, you're looking at about 6 to 10 exercises per session on these. I usually have guys do supersets. So I do like A1, A2, B1, B2, and like a C1, C2, C3. That would give you right there 4, 7 exercises. You can do like a C1, C2, and a D1, D2, give it 8 exercises. It just kind of varies. But a superset is this example right here. It's let's say you're gonna do 4 sets of 10 on squats and 4 sets of 10 on push-ups. So you would go through your squats for 1 set of 10. Then immediately after that, you go right into your push-ups. The push-ups don't really affect the muscles that you are using when you are squatting and vice versa. So they're not really going to impact each other. So sometimes I like to do an upper body with a lower body. If you're doing a total body day, sometimes for a superset, depending on where guys are at, some guys need more mobility work. So let's say if it's a squat day, for example, I'm going to pair a hip mobility exercise with the squat. So it's not too intensive. It's not going to take away from the squat. It's actually going to help the squat and really make them get more out of that work that they're doing that day. Now, another tip I should have added on here that I did not add is working sets versus warm-up sets. If this says 4 sets of 10, that does not mean that you throw 100 pounds on the bar and you get through 10 reps. You're like, oh, I easily could have done 20 more. Then you add more weight, you do another set, you add more weight, you do another set, and then you stay at that weight. And now you're at your 4th set, and all of a sudden, your last set was your working set weight. You need to go through however many warm-up sets you need to get to your working set weight, which is going to be based off of your percentages, right? So again, I'm giving an example here, the 4x10, but this needs to be taken into account because you're not going to get that much workload, that much volume in if you're only doing 1 working set. So these are 4 working sets. 4 sets does not count your warm-up sets. That's a big thing most guys miss. All right, so here's just a quick 3-day total body workout routine that I had for one of my baseball players. So this is my template that I use for my workout design that I share with my clients, that I'll build their program for them and send it over. So up top, you can see there's the movement prep, and then there's the lower body activation. Today for this day 1 was a dumbbell RDL for 8 reps, focusing on, and I'm going to, tip here, a little coaching cue, and then stir the pot. So for him, he needed more core stability. So instead of doing a lower body exercise there, I added in a core stability exercise, which can also enhance the workout without taking away, without being overly challenging, that it's going to take away from the strength work that he's trying to do there. Okay, so the black is my A1, this tannish is my A2, right? This is my first superset, this is my second superset, and then it's C1, C2, and C3. All right, so this is how I design programs a lot of the times, and how you can take this and plan it into your own workouts. You could just do straight sets if you wanted to. Go, this is 4 sets of 8 on the dumbbell RDL. Then you could go 4 sets of 8 on the dumbbell reverse lunge, and just do straight across all 4 sets and then move on to the next exercise. All right, the resiliency, R6. So this is can be twofold, and it could be one or the other, it could be a bit of both. But what you're looking at with this, a lot of times, going back to this down here at the bottom, the main accessory lifts, this is what I would call the resiliency piece. Now, this is going to be from the assessment that we went through, the areas that are weak or overactive that need strengthening to to give value to enhance and improve the core lifts. All right. So these are going to be typically isolation exercises, are going to be core exercises, shoulder stability exercises, glute exercises, hip flexor, different things that are going to target these accessory muscles that aren't really the primary muscles. Now, some of them are primary muscles, but I'm talking about the big drivers of, we already covered the pecs and the traps and the lats and the big muscle groups for the main movements. Now we need to enhance those and target the accessory muscle groups, the secondary muscle groups, with the resiliency work that are going to support the total body work that we're doing. And again, based on the assessment. So a lot of guys want to do arm care stuff. We can definitely do some arm care stuff, but total body care, pitching is a total body motion, throwing is a total body motion, but we really relate it just to the arm. So arm care is more of a trendy term, in a catchphrase in the sports world, in the baseball world. So that's one that gets too much attention, where I think it needs to be focused on the total body care, because if your hips are jacked up and not moving, like I talked about, then we cause compensations up the chain. And that's where a lot of issues mechanically happen with the arm, but if the hips were able to rotate properly, your trunk could move better, your thoracic spine would move better. That means your arm can move better and more free. So that's where a lot of that really comes into play. Now, cardio, I don't have guys do traditional cardio. Think about first building an aerobic base. Again, do your research on this kind of stuff. I'm trying to give you free game here. It's too much to try to dive into each individual one of these things. If you really want me to dive deeper into these and to talk about some of this stuff, again, leave a comment below or shoot me a message, or questions that you have, and we can talk about that stuff too. So these are just some recommendations, but it's lower intensity, look up like zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, like aerobic training. It goes back into heart rate. If your heart rate is over a certain beats per minute, then you're in a higher zone and you're getting into more anaerobic training versus aerobic training. So a lower intensity building up an aerobic base and a strength base. Those are the two big bases that we're trying to build. So there you go. All right. R7 is recovery. So this is kind of going back to the first two. We're doing repeating R1, which is the breath work, repeating R2, which you can, if you want to, if you're a little, pretty gassed after that workout, or you just want to stay on top of that stuff because, that area was really painful before, you can double up on it. You can do some static stretching here. I would focus on like the quads and the hip flexors, probably the hamstrings and the calves, maybe the pecs or the traps would be big areas to focus on for static stretching. But I like, just laying flat on your back, having the legs straight up the wall, and just focus on breathing. Again, going from the fight or flight response, sympathetic, to parasympathetic with the rest and digest. Doing, like a child's pose position, focus on your breath there, really feeling your belly expand into your thighs, butterfly pose, and just reaching out and letting your body rotate in these different positions, loosening up the hips. It just depends on what the day was like. All right, so some additional recovery tips, body weight in grams of protein. So if you're 200 pounds, eating 200 grams of protein in a day, half your body weight or more, really ideally more, in ounces of water. Sleep, okay? Sleep works in 90-minute cycles. So you'd be better off getting 6 hours of sleep than 7 hours of sleep. You'd be better than getting 7.5 hours of sleep than 8 hours of sleep. The way your body works in these cycles, you're actually waking up at the end of these 90 minutes, but your body just rolls right through it. And it really counts from the time that it takes time for your body to get into a state that it's ready to fall asleep. So from the time you actually lay down to the time you go to sleep, let's say you're setting an alarm for 6 a.m., but you're going like laying down to go to bed at 6 o'clock or at midnight, thinking you're going to get 6 hours and do your cycles of 1.5, 3, 4.5, 6. You're not going to get that because it may take you 30 minutes, an hour, however long to fall asleep. Now, if you can fall asleep within a few minutes, great. It's tougher for a lot of people. So you need to calculate that time into your recovery, into your sleep time side of things. Cold therapy is very different than icing. Okay, I'm not a proponent of icing. I would look up the guy who founded the Rice method, or Price, pressure, rest, ice, compression, elevation. He has since redacted that methodology and that acronym as far as recovery goes, and as far as like soreness and some of that stuff. You're not helping yourself, particularly after pitching. Guys, they think they need to ice. It's a load of shit. You don't need to be icing. Go with these cold therapy options as an alternative for that. Looking at cryotherapy is kind of cream of the crop there, but it can be expensive. Maybe not have access to that. Cold whirlpool therapy, or a cold shower, or just getting your own, putting ice, a bunch of ice, getting a couple bags of ice, dumping it in the tub and soaking in that for 10 minutes or so. Really just being able to control the breathing. Your body is going to go into survival mode, and it's going to take all of the blood from the extremities, from the hands and the legs and the arms, and push it to your vital organs, because it's trying to help you survive. And all that blood goes back to these core organs, the central part of your body, and is going to circulate in there. It's going to increase that blood flow because it's trying to warm your body up. Homeostasis, right? Look up what homeostasis is. Basically, when your body gets cold, it's going to try to warm you back up to get you to your room temperature, your normal. If you get too hot, it's going to try to cool you down. When you get out of it and your body can release all that blood back out to the extremities, you get a rush of endorphins, you get fresh blood that's going to help bring fresh nutrients to that area, help your body heal, etc. So that's a really good way to recover there. So part 2, that's all we're going to cover today in part 1. I thought I was going to be able to do this live, so I had like a Q&A planned, but obviously not going to be able to do that. So drop all your questions. I'm going to have this in the group. Drop all your questions in the chat, in the comment section. I'll go through and reply to those. But for part 2, we're going to talk about the nutrition side of things, because if you're going to be working out, you got to be taking care of your body nutritionally. You're going to have demands that you need to meet there. We need to put on size for a lot of guys. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the throwing program. We're going to talk about how, like, an overspeed, underspeed for the hitting side of things to increase bat speed and power. And then we'll dive into some of the mechanic stuff as well. Hopefully we have time for all that in the next one. If I need to do a part 3 for that, we will. So here is, if you want to really do this on your own, a DIY, always starting with the peer-reviewed research. Here's a few great resources for that front. Again, I mentioned Eric Cressy earlier and Mike Robertson. Those are 2 big guys in the strength conditioning world that have a lot of research out there, a lot of blogs and podcasts and content. And I've done some work with some of Cressy's team. I've actually flown to Boston. He has a facility in Boston. He has one in Jupiter. I flew to Boston to train with him and his team back in 2017. And got to learn how they go through some of their stuff. So a lot of value there. Is one of the best in the business. FRC, okay, functional range conditioning. We're talking about the mobility work and passing the 4 rotary centers. Really, this is what I'm going to be doing with a lot of guys to help them improve their mobility. And there's a lot of training videos and such out there. Just look up hip pails, rails, and cars, and what those mean. Study that kind of stuff. My friend Ben Brewster of Tread Athletics, he is dominating the pitching world and training and developing high-level pitchers, getting guys drafted, throwing hard, building just monsters on the mound. And I was one of tongue tied up today. I was one of Ben's first clients back in 2014, before he was really well known. He's just getting out of college not too long before that. So he's one of the best minds in the game. I've done a few podcasts with him and trainings with him. So he's got a facility out in Charlotte. North Carolina now, which if you're on TikTok, you probably see a lot of those videos of guys doing bullpens out there, which is super cool. Cal Dietz triphasic training and the conjugate method. Those two kind of training methods. We're talking about the meat and potatoes and the R7 stuff. Most of the like R3, 4, and 5, and 6 are going to be covered in the triphasic training and the conjugate method. So go and do your research on that stuff. Now, obviously, I've been doing this for a while. Not everybody has this depth, this training, this background, and it can be confusing to do this on your own. And there's a lot of information out there, and there can be a lot of misinformation out there. I want to make sure guys are getting what they need. This is why I do private coaching for guys across the core 4 and making sure that they're looking at these 4 areas and their training. So I'm offering a complimentary strategy call. You can use this link. I'll post it in the comments below, or you can shoot me a message if you want me to send that to you. We'll go through, your program right now, what you're doing, what your goals are, where you're at, what you're trying to get to, and help you build out a plan to do that and see if it makes sense for us to work together. So check out that link right there, calendly.com/strike-strength/strategy call. Pretty simple. We'll book a time and we'll get you on the right path, whether that's working with me or you're doing it on your own and you're just looking for some free resources. I'm happy to help and guide you in the right direction here. Just want to make sure guys are getting the most out of their training this off season so that they can make 2023 their best season ever. So that's all I got for you guys tonight. Thank you so much. And we'll tune in for part 2 coming up in 2 weeks. So not next Tuesday, but a week from Tuesday. Thanks.